Welcome to today's Hangout On Air session for igniteCS. We are here to talk to you today about designing your outreach program. So I'm Erin Cannon.
Sloan Davis.
And we are working on the igniteCS program here at Google. We also have with us today a special guest, Samit Ranu, who is joining us. Hi, Samit. Thank you for taking the time. So, Samit, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but I'm just going to give a couple notes about you. Samit is a student at the University of Cincinnati who has been part of our pilot program for igniteCS. So she's got a little experience under her belt, and she's running her second iteration this go around. So we're going to hear a little bit about how she designed her outreach program and ask some questions. If you have questions for Samit or for Sloan and myself, feel free to ask. We can see them pop up over here, so we'll answer them as they come in. So Samit, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to help everyone else out here. So I'm a junior in computer science at the University of Cincinnati. I joined this club called the Association for Computing Machinery Committee on Women. So I did that along with Priya Chawla and a few other people. She couldn't make it today, but I was the secretary last year for it. So when we first started this program, I wasn't that involved with the startup, but I knew everything that was going on. This year I'm the vice president, so I'm like stepping things up and being more involved with it. So I'll try to tell you guys as much as I can about how the program was designed and all the basic questions. But basically, UC has this program called Bearcat Buddies, and it's just a tutoring program that we did with the high school that was right across the street from our campus. So it was kind of already set in there, we're already doing stuff with that community. So we thought it'd be a great idea to do a Bearcat Coders program with them. That's what we call our igniteCS initiative. So we did that with a class of around 12 to 20 students with a teacher named Miss Grasso, and we just had her try to figure out how she wants to lead that and how she wants to integrate the stuff Google can offer into her classroom and what she teaches them. And last year she only had it with one of her classes called Web Design, but now she's integrating it with her APCS class, basic web design course, and all the other different computer fundamental courses. So she tried to spread it a lot more. So it started off as a smaller program, and now we're expanding it into other classes to be able to teach the students there too.
So Samit, how did you find them when you were first thinking about doing an igniteCS program? How did you know to look for the Bearcats Club?
Well, Priya was very involved with our community service department at UC, so she knew that there was something called Bearcat Buddies out there already. I know a lot of times I'd get emails on these listservs saying, if you want to be part of Bearcat Buddies, sign up to tutor these students. So that was how we got the idea of finding those people specifically to do the Bearcat Coders program with. It seemed like the best idea because it's right across the street. All the volunteers are students, so right after their classes or between their classes, they can just walk there. It's maybe a 2 to 5 minute walk, and then they could come back and continue their classes.
That's a really good point for students who don't have a lot of spare time in between things. Picking a location that's close by would make it a lot easier to volunteer. So Sloan, I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit more information or more thoughts about Samit mentioned, student community or outreach organization on campus. That's a really good place to start when you're looking for partners or trying to think about how to begin your process for your outreach. Sloan, can you give us a couple more thoughts about other opportunities or things that you might do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the great thing about being involved with an educational institution is that they are, kind of beacons in their local communities. They don't just exist in a bubble. They've been, working with the students that come to their schools from the area, just kind of getting to know the larger scope of education and community around them. So it's very likely that your schools, if they don't have a designated center for community outreach or engagement, that they have these partnerships in place. It's not uncommon for professors or other faculty at educational institutions to have their kids going to a nearby school. So, there's a lot of ways that you can find these places to start working. But if you're feeling a little bit like, your educational institution might not have these partnerships or you're not exactly sure who to talk to find them, start by just looking for the school districts that are nearest or on your campus. It's possible that they overlap, and you can kind of work backwards by contacting a school administrator in a local district and seeing if they're going to express any interest. Other than that, like Sumit mentioned, look for those community engagement offices or other sources of volunteering partnerships.
Excellent. Yeah. I would also add that if you have a teacher college at your university or your school, they might also have some partnership opportunities there already in place. So you might reach out to them. After school programs are another good place to start if you have local boys and girls clubs or Girl Scout troops and things like that. A lot of the time they're also open to this sort of outreach program. So another place to kind of start looking. And once you zero in on what's out there, you can start to narrow it down as to what grade you want to work with and what age, and then from there what materials. So, Sumit, you mentioned that for you all, you are working with high school students. I am wondering if you have any thoughts around how you developed your program for that age specifically. Did you do it alone? Did you work with the teacher? How'd you go about doing that?
We definitely worked with the teacher on that because she knew her students very well. It was a class of 12 to 20 students, so she was a very great teacher, and she knew everyone personally, so she could tell what level would be best for all of them. And we used something called Scratch. Sure, you've heard of it before, because that's like basic building blocks for computer science or for programming, and it helps the students think like programmers without having to like learn the syntax or be able to type fast and all that stuff. So it takes the syntax and all that stuff outside of programming and tries to focus on those core concepts of how to build stuff and put stuff together. So we definitely talked to Ms. Grasso a lot when we were developing this, and that had help from you guys and so on.
Excellent. Sloan, can you give us some more thoughts about the development process when after you've narrowed it into a specific age range?
Yeah, so jumping first off age range, it's important to consider what you as mentors have to offer to a group of mentees. Think back to your own career as a student. When you were in 5th grade, what did you want to do? Who did you want to hear from? When you were in high school, what did you want to do? Who did you want to hear from? I know that last year Bearcat Coders spent a lot of time working with their students, talking about college preparedness and making yourself the best self for whatever it is that you want to do. So if you think that's something that you really want to share with students, definitely try and work with a high school. If you just want to get young kids excited about all the possibilities that computer science and engineering can bring, maybe see if you can work with K through 4 or a middle school. But after you choose that age that you want to work with, it's really about considering what sort of prior exposure your students have had to computer science. If it's no exposure at all, Sumit's totally right. You're going to want to interact with programming in a very approachable way. Scratch, Blockly, there's a lot of really great tools out there that can let you go back and forth between text-based coding and block-based or visual languages. Pencil code is another really great opportunity for that, where you can actually switch back and forth between pencils and text to see the actual code that you're creating right on the page. If you've got students who are a little bit more advanced, or who, maybe kids who have a hard time staying focused in class, or who have a hard time coming to class to read out of a textbook, maybe you want to engage them through hands-on materials like robots or engineering design challenges that you can just do with things like glue and popsicle sticks. You can kind of really range from a whole spectrum of really simple to really complex materials, but it's really important to consider what the students already know and what they want to know and how they want to get between those two parts.
So let's say I start my outreach program and I have something in mind and I know exactly what I want to do. What happens when I get to the partner organization that I'm working with and find out that it's just not working?
Yeah, that's always a fun one. So the best programs, and Erin, you know this, I know this as program managers, is the best programs are ones that are flexible, who respond to the feedback that they're getting in real time, and who are willing to, kind of think on their feet in situations like that. So I think we mentioned last week that there was a group who, they were designing their outreach. They said, okay, we're going to do Java, and then just a week before they got into school, they realized that they just did not have enough time to teach the students as much information as they wanted to teach about Java. So I think it's two things about being able to kind of respond quickly like that. One is having a community-focused goal in mind from the beginning. It's more likely that you'll be able to be responsive and have as close of a functional design as possible, but it's also just hearing what it is that's going to be difficult and finding the most direct solution after that. So if it's a matter of time, maybe you can consider going into the school more often. If it's a matter of difficulty, maybe see if you can find those same programming concepts in simpler delivery methods like Python or Scratch.
Excellent. I would also add that we are here as resources for you, so keep that in mind as well. We, if you are having issues or struggles or just having questions along the way, either before or as you're developing your program or as it's going along, we are here to help you succeed. So do reach out to us. Sloan is also working on some really great resources for the students who will be funded, so that you will have access to those as well, and they'll help you in those difficult times. Samit, I know that you all, as you mentioned, you did this program last year and you're doing it a little bit differently this year. I would love to hear about how you came to those changes and and what those changes were, just going a little bit through that process.
Yeah, definitely. So last year it was like we just started it, we didn't know what was going on, so we just stuck with one class, as I discussed before. And the biggest change is, instead of having volunteers go over just to one class during one class period, we're going to all these different classes that are offered at the high school. They just weren't part of it before, so Ms. Grant really helped us lead where that could be applied and where we could do that. So that's one of the biggest changes, and the reason we were able to do that was because we became more comfortable with the program. We knew what was going on. We took the feedback really seriously and tried to, make minor changes in there. Another thing would be, we noticed we had a lot more volunteers this year, and that has to do with how we reached out to people that would want to volunteer, marketing this activity, or just reaching out to different student groups and spreading the word about it. So we told them, you don't need to know how to program, you can come in, because I feel like last year people were a little intimidated by being a coding program, but I realized we have people from marketing majors, from all different backgrounds that don't know programming. They're able to help us out with this, because the core concepts of programming are very simple, and Scratch, anyone can learn it, anyone can teach it. So I'd say we have a lot more volunteers this year just because of that.
Your program is very unique, Samit, and I would love to just hear a little bit more about it, because I think that the way that you all have developed it is pretty cool. You have a lot of different volunteers going into the Bearcat Coders clubs and providing mentorship. Can you just tell us a little bit about the design of your program specifically, how many students you have involved and how it works? Because I also know that you are all very busy, so not everybody goes to every volunteer session.
Right. Yeah, so we have around 50 people that signed up to volunteer initially at our first meeting. I feel like the people that came there regularly were probably around 20, but people came here and there. There are time slots for 4 days a week. This is all based on Miss Grant. We didn't decide this, we just changed it based on what her classes, how they go. So it's 4 days a week, and then there's different time slots. There's there was a 9:30, I believe, that there's one around lunchtime, and there's different classes. So Ms. Grasso told us what class begins at what time. So all the volunteers were at that meeting, and they were able to figure out, oh, APCS is at this time, or this class is at this time. They can choose what they're most comfortable with and what fits in with their schedule, and then sign up for it. So we just had volunteers choose a few days, and then if there was an imbalance, one of the leaders from ACMW would go in, and if there aren't enough people, we'd go in and make sure someone's there. So that's kind of how we had the program running, a few days a week, a few time slots. So we had around maybe 10 to 15 different time slots. So it was very flexible, and it made it easy for volunteers to choose something that fits for them.
Very nice. You mentioned feedback and that you took the feedback very seriously. Can you talk a little bit about when you received the feedback, how you received the feedback, and what you did with it?
Yeah, most of the feedback was directly from Miss Grasso. Whenever I would go to volunteer at the end of class, when class is over, I'd just stay there for a few minutes and just talk to her about what went good today, what went bad, what would you like to see more of, and is there anything different that we can do? Most of it was very minor changes because we were with her on this whole program, so it went the way she wanted, but there were comments like, I would like it if you focused on this student and talked to these two people, or went here and there's, because there's always students that are more focused, and then there's ones that are less focused, and you can't really teacher them because you're not a teacher. So it's kind of like figuring out that balance, and Miss Grasso was really good about it. She's like, you're allowed to tell them to go do work, or tell them to stop watching videos or anything like that. So it's kind of like aligning it with what she had in mind with it.
That's a really important thing that you just said that I think will be the difference between somebody feeling successful in their program and somebody feeling a little bit lost, which is that continuous feedback loop is pretty important. If you are in a position where you can work closely with your partner, whether that's the teacher there, with the help of your advisor, just to make sure that you are all on the same page. There are a lot of places where information can be lost, or you might not realize that you are thinking slightly differently about something. So just constantly checking in, I think, is a really great way of making sure that everybody's getting what they want out of the program. Sloan, did you have any thoughts about feedback and how to get it and what it's useful for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's quite the question there. But, I think to start, not only is it important to directly get that feedback from your contacts in the partner school, whether it be a teacher, an administrator, also with each other, the other mentors who are participating. After every session, take 5-10 minutes, do a quick postmortem, ask each other, what was the thing that you did today that you're most proud of? What was the thing that you did today that you felt most unsure about? There's all kinds of questions that can kind of lead the entire group in a more cohesive direction. But time after time, the mentors who participated in the igniteCS pilot program last year told us that the most valuable feedback they got was just being around the students that they were mentoring. You can really tell when students are enjoying something that they're learning, or when they're getting a little bit bored by something. And if you notice that all of your students seem to be really animated and they just can't sit still and really want to tell their friends about their finished Scratch program, but they're all kind of sitting on their hands and staring off into space when you're telling them about for loops or conditionals or something, you can kind of understand that balance of, all right, they like to create, they don't like to listen. So how can you integrate listening into the creating process? Being around your mentees and understanding what they value is really important. And for igniteCS applicants who are funded, you'll have access to some kind of preliminary survey tools that you can give to your partner school students and contacts so that you can hear directly how they think the program is going.
Excellent, thank you. So, Samit, your program this year, have you started this year yet? Or did you start in the spring?
We started in the fall, so we started in August or something like that.
Excellent. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Right now, school's over, so nothing going on right now, but it went pretty well. We started a little bit late this time because it took a while to get our ACM club meetings up to date since we're doing it through our club, but we were able to get like 2 months in there, so that was good, and we will be doing it in the spring as well.
Excellent. And I think you sound like you're old hat at this. You sound very comfortable. I think maybe some of our viewers and some of the people who are starting this for the first time might not feel as comfortable. What would your advice be to people who are feeling a little intimidated about the whole process and getting started?
I'd say you're probably going to make mistakes on your first round, just like we did. We didn't do it perfectly. We only had like a few time slots. It wasn't that huge of a deal, but it still influenced like a few students. So don't feel sad if it doesn't work out the way you want it to. Just keep changing it. Something doesn't work out, figure out why it happened, move on. So I feel like it sounds intimidating. It was intimidating at first. You're like, oh, what's going on? Paperwork, what do we do? But you've been really helpful with that. Filling out the proposal and everything. It wasn't that stressful, but it's a little bit intimidating, I guess. But basically, just use other people. I mean, have like a support structure. Have enough people that are involved with this. We had all of our club officers involved with it, so there are around 5 of us to bounce ideas off of. But if you're just one person doing it alone, it might not work out that well. So have people to talk to about it. Have enough people to get feedback from.
Really great advice. Sloan, do you have advice for people starting out?
Yeah, I think taking that first step is always the biggest. And then once the ball's rolling, it's, again, about being responsive and listening to the needs of your program and the participants. As Erin has mentioned, we are here. We are definitely your support system, and it's not just Erin and I. There's a couple more of us back here, too. There are a lot of other really great opportunities for support, both within igniteCS. We're going to be doing some partnerships where if funded programs are interested, they can have mentors of their own. There's going to be more opportunities like these Hangouts where we can do kind of an office hours scenario where if you've got a problem that your group hasn't quite been able to figure out, we can kind of put the hive mind together and see if someone else has run into the same issue before. Aside from that, just go back to those people that you see as mentors, maybe your faculty advisor, maybe a family member, maybe a good friend, and it doesn't help to just run the hiccup by as many people as you can. Good data always comes from a large sample size.
Absolutely. We have a couple questions, so I'm going to ask those as we continue our conversation. First, can we get access to those resources even if we're not selected? I'd love to be able to see these resources, especially Sloan's feedback tools, to enhance my community outreach program. So, like your programs that you all might be developing, igniteCS is also in a continuous feedback situation, right? We are running this program and looking for ways to make it better, ways to make sure that we are getting the participants what they need. In order to do that effectively, we are closing off the resources that are available to the people who are funded and the applicants who will be funded this go around. However, that does not mean that we won't be sharing those tools in the future. It just means that for now we need to figure out how to best develop them before we share them out. Did you want to add anything to that, Sloan?
Yeah, I think it's also important to consider that developing and maintaining those resources isn't necessarily a slow going or a rapid process. So there's a lot of work that goes into them. There's a lot of work that goes into maintaining them. And as we're building out igniteCS from our pilot program last year of, I believe, 12 schools that we funded to this year, and we're hoping to fund way more than 12, we're doing some learning of our own too. And that includes, making sure that those resources are developed as best as they can be. And in order to do that, we're going to do that in more of a closed circuit to get that feedback that we need.
Okay, another question. Are there any restrictions on the types of schools we can work with? For example, faith-related, single-sex schools, etc. So the short answer is no. There are not restrictions on who you can work with. As we mentioned in the previous Hangout, and if you haven't seen that one, I do recommend going back and taking a look. We are interested in the why and the how. So be specific about why you chose the partner school that you chose, how that communication has come about, what you are doing to work with them. As Samit mentioned, they have a specific teacher that they work with. If that's the case, let us know. It will be very important for us to have that information when we're looking at your application so that we can see that you have been purposeful about choosing who you choose. Now, if the answer is this is the school that's closest to us, that's a perfectly reasonable way to pick a partner school. So don't worry that what your choices are too flippant. Just let us know so that we know that you have been thinking about it. Any additional thoughts on that one, Sloan? I can reread it for you if you want because I kind of veered off.
Well, it was specific schools like faith-based or single-sex, right?
Mm-hmm. You got it.
So also something that we mentioned last week is, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, is that with that why and the how in your application, be clear, be concise, and be, I guess that kind of gets wrapped into concise, be brief. We don't need a 5-page essay on why the school that you chose is the school that you chose, but a well-crafted application will be able to convey that information to us in a simple paragraph.
So feel free to keep those questions coming as we continue our discussion. So Samit, let me ask you this: you are working on your current iteration through the spring semester. How did you decide the length of your program?
It all depended on when the students are in the school, plus when our UC students have exams. So, for example, the school was until, I believe, the third week of December-ish. So, but our classes were over the first week of December, and then we had exams the second week of December. So, it was all like mishmashed together. So what we did was we let volunteers know, if you want, you can go in the other week, but in the end, we decided to cancel that last exam week altogether because there's exams, everyone's stressed out, so we didn't want to put that on them. And then the school ended a week later, but we did not, we weren't there for those 2 weeks just because of the timing to accommodate both the students at Hughes, which is the high school we volunteered with, and then the volunteers. So we tried to keep both of those things in mind. I think that's all that really should matter when it comes to the length. You should be able to try to be available as much as possible, but then use those constraints to decide when to stop.
Yeah, I think that's very smart. We want igniteCS to be a fun experience for you, and something that's a value add as opposed to another stress point. So what Samit is saying, I think, is very important, which is, weigh the balances, and if it's not a good time, don't force it to work during that time. We understand that you all are individual human beings, and that there are limits to your time and your energy. Did you want to add anything to that, Sloan?
Yeah, I would actually say last year I'm fairly confident that the biggest barrier igniteCS mentors told us they experienced was that kind of scheduling question, both around scheduling in the partner school and scheduling in their educational institution. I think having an idea, once you find your partner school, having an idea of where those academic schedules overlap, like Sumit mentioned, with exams at the university. There's also standardized testing in the K-12 schools. Being clear about those schedules early is the best way to avoid any hiccups up down the road.
I'd like to add something really quick regarding scheduling, but like on a daily basis. I know that one thing we did want to add, we didn't add this in yet, but hopefully next semester I'll try to get that in, is having somewhere where volunteers can sign up for slots and then change it based on their availability to make sure that someone is always there. We try to put people in groups and say at least one person from the red group and the green group and the blue group has to be there that day. But it didn't work out that well because we didn't have a tool that we use to sync all that information. But that's definitely something that you could look out for to make sure there isn't that stress when someone's like, oh, I can't make it. How do I know someone else is going to be there? Like, I don't want to let someone down. That way they can see, well, this person's going to be there, so maybe I should email them and let them know. So that communication between all the volunteers is a huge thing, and we're still working on incorporating it. Baby steps here, so we'll get that in as soon as we can.
Did you find a tool that you think might work, or are you still working through that?
Still working through it. Kind of busy right now, but we're trying to look into it and see how that will work. I'm really not sure where to start. Thinking something along the lines of just Excel might even work, something as simple as that, but then again, you have to teach all the volunteers how to enter information in there and how to sync it all up. So
I wonder if there's a way to use, a joint calendar, like a Google Calendar or something, and have that be something that, other people can edit as well. It might be tricky, but something to think about.
Sounds like a good idea. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks.
Yeah. So you had mentioned, Samit, that you know, we have been talking. I know you all reached out to us on a number of occasions just to kind of get our feedback or our thoughts, or just to make sure that something was okay. I imagine that that's not actually an easy thing to do when you're first starting out, reaching out to strangers and asking for their input. How would you, or what would you suggest to students or to other people who are maybe a little bit nervous about reaching out to Sloan and myself and the other people here at Google, or to an advisor to try to get somebody signed on to help you, just in general? How would you advise somebody to get over that hump?
I'd say, even for me, it's always hard to approach someone you don't know. That's normal, but the truth is the person you're talking to is very likely going to be more laid back than you think, and they're going to want you to ask questions. So keep that in mind. Aaron, I've talked to you for the past year or 1.5 years or so. At the beginning, I was like, oh, what do I say? How do I talk? How do I approach this person? But now that we've talked before, it makes it a little bit easier just to have that personal connection there. So I'd say don't get intimidated by the person you're about to ask questions to, because if they don't have the answer, they're just going to tell you they don't have the answer. That's the worst thing that can happen. Just think about it that way, I'd say. Just like with anything else in life or at work or anything like that. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Everyone's super approachable at Google, I can say that.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way. That's our goal, is to be approachable. So that makes me feel good. I'm going to wait and see if we have any more questions come in. In the meantime, Sloan, can you talk a little bit about those beginning, when, okay, you know that you want to start a program, you have maybe reached out to the community center, or you found an advisor, you've done one thing toward this, but how do you get to that next step of actually developing and figuring out what you're going to do?
Yeah, so there are definitely some preliminary blocks that need to fall into place before getting to things like contacting other mentors or creating schedules or designing the instructional materials. And we've touched on a few of those things already. The first is the age group that you want to work with. What kind of students do you want to teach? What do you want to share, and who is best going to receive that? After you have that, you can work backwards and find the closest partner school or the partner school that's going to work best for your university. Set up a contact at that partner school as soon as possible. It might be that they really want to make it happen and it just isn't going to work between the two schedules and you need to contact someone else. So getting those communications established as early as possible is definitely going to be helpful. After that, I would consider what kind of format you want to use. Is this going to be an in-school element? Is it going to be an after-school element? Is it going to be independent of the school year entirely? One of our pilot programs last year was running summer camps in Rhodes College in Tennessee. So figuring out that format, in school, after school, extracurricular, is also really important. That's something where I think after you make that first connection in the partner school, you can kind of figure out what's going to work well for them. Sumit mentioned developing a plan for frequency. How often are you going to be in the partner school? When are you going to start your outreach? When is it going to end? Jumping off that, have an idea of what kind of instructional materials you want to make use of. You've got the age, you've got the frequency. Hughes High School, they were working in classrooms where they're specifically complementing what Miss Grasso was teaching. So that's really great. And then I would say the last thing to consider is, do you want to go to the students or do you want to bring the students to you? Some of our programs that we ran last year brought the partner school students to their university or college. Other programs went to the school. There's some kind of administrative things that you need to be mindful of, such as, what sort of liability is there in transporting university or partner school students. But that's the questions that you can feel free to email us about or join us on a Hangout in the future. But those first steps, age, school, format, frequency, are kind of the who, what, when, where, and why that you're going to want to put into your application.
So let's say I have a lot of different choices, right? I've reached out to 4 different schools and they're all interested, and one's an elementary school and one's a middle school, one's an after school program. How do I narrow it down? How do I find the one that's going to work?
I think when you've got kind of a bunch of feelers set out in your community that are pretty diverse like that, you can kind of walk it back to what's going to work best for us. What's going to work best for us as mentors, as an educational institution, as an ACMW chapter, as insert the descriptor you choose. It's not only about making your mentees excited about learning and engaging with them on a personal level. It's about you being able to develop a program that you're confident and proud of. And if it looks like you've talked to a bunch of schools and it looks like the high school is going to be the one that you want to work with, but you're nervous about committing to teaching some higher level programming concepts, that's okay. Don't want to overexert yourself for the sake of your mentees. You want to develop a program that you're confident about too. So if it looks like you've got a lot of choices out there, start turning to the fellow mentors that you're going to be working with and ask them what they want to do.
Excellent. We've got a couple more questions here. I'd love to hear from Samit about how she balances her time between her own classwork and activities and working on the igniteCS program. How time-consuming is working on the program for you, Samit?
I'd say in terms of non-volunteer stuff, so let's set aside the time I put to go to Hughes and volunteer. It isn't that huge of a time commitment. It is a little bit, you have to make sure you touch base on it, but since the work is divided between 5 of us exec members, it usually works out. Like, one person's busy, the other person can, take over and take care of it. But I wouldn't even say maybe once a month, maybe. Like, it's not that big of a time commitment after the initial steps, of course. The initial steps, the proposal takes a little while to think about, write about, communicating with all these people. We had to communicate with the community service area, the committee at UC, so figuring out times with them and communicating with them and so on. So we had 5 people to do it, so it worked out well, but I wouldn't say if it's that big of a deal. And balancing volunteering with my class schedule, I was able to volunteer much more the first go around, but last semester I took 21 credit hours worth of classes, overloaded my schedule. I'm trying to get my MBA and my bachelor's at the same time, and it's really tough. But so that's the reason I didn't have that much time this semester, but that was fine. I was still able to go in and volunteer once or twice a week. It wasn't that big of a deal, I'd say. It just depends on how many people. The more people you have that have volunteering, the less time each person individually has to commit and the less stress there.
Yeah. Good advice. I think that you mentioned this a couple of times, and I think it's very important. One of the reasons why we ask for at least 5 people to be involved in your program is exactly what Samit is talking about, which is that if you are able to spread that leadership around a little bit, it's going to be much less stressful and much easier for you as a group to complete a program that you find successful than if 1 or 2 people is trying to take it on all by themselves. Okay, the next question is, will there be a community set up between all selected awardees? Googlers may be approachable, but I'm worried that they may be super busy or my question is more suitable to other participants, for example, to get best practices or advice on resources. Good question, and the answer is yes. We are working on a way to connect the students to each other. Again, we are not going to force anybody to participate in something that they don't want to or they don't find useful. But the idea is that we will provide a closed network for students to be able to connect with each other. We're working on how to do this specifically now, so more to come in the new year on that. In addition, we are also going to be providing industry mentors to our funded mentors themselves, so that if Samit and the other people in her program want to connect with an industry mentor of their own, they will be able to do that, and they can help you through some of the questions about mentoring. They can help you through your own kind of struggles or questions that you have either personally or about the program specifically. So that's something new this year that we're implementing, and will be available to people who are participating in funded programs. Did you want to add anything to that, Sloan?
If I were to add anything, I'd say that don't worry about our time, but we'll have specific time set aside, I think every week, to do office hours, so that any questions you guys have after your programs have been funded, drop in on those office hours or schedule some specific time to meet with us. We're here for you, so take advantage of it.
And Samit is going to be one of the people, she doesn't know it yet, but she's going to be one of the people who's going to help us work through some of these resources as well. So I'm sure Samit, you'll be happy to give us your feedback so that we can only make it better.
Of course, always.
Okay, are there any more questions from the audience? There's a little bit of a lag, so I'll give a little space there for people to ask any more outstanding questions that they have. In the meantime, I just want to stress as well that we are, as Sloan said, we are here, as Samit alluded to. We actually love answering these questions. It's not just part of our job, it's our passion. So do reach out to us. igniteCS@google.com is the email address where you can reach us. We are here to answer questions that you might have during this process. We are happy to hear about what it is you're thinking about, and either if you have specific questions or if you just want to say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, what do you think? We're happy to do that as well. So we are dedicated to this program and to helping you through creating the most successful program that you can. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions come in. So I would love to get a final words of advice from each of you. Samit, do you want to start and give us just your final thoughts about, applying for the igniteCS funding?
Yeah, so one thing I haven't covered before I've been thinking about was I told you guys I'm part of ACMW. I'd say for anyone looking to start, it'd be a great idea to find a club that's already established at your university, because it really helped us, not just because of that support structure and finding volunteers. It's like every meeting we had during our general meetings, we would mention, oh, this is going on with Bearcat Coders, so anyone that hasn't heard about it, they can get excited and they'll join too. So it's a good way to get more volunteers in, and also to get people more engaged, and a good way to find time, because you can't, it's really difficult to set aside meetings that are separate for all the Bearcat Coders volunteers, but since we have our ACMW general meetings, we just have people come in and we give a little Bearcat Coders update at the end. So it's a good channel to get that information out as well. So I would say find your support structure there, find a group or even a group of friends if you can to start off with. So.
Great advice. Sloan?
Yeah, and then after you've got your support structure in place, definitely use them as kind of your hive mind for brainstorming as you're developing your application. We understand that some of the details might fall into place after you hear the decision on whether your program has been funded or not. But what we do definitely want to see in the application is, that dedication to feedback and being an on your feet kind of program, and that you're invested in the community. So that community includes you as mentors, and use that support system, design a program that's going to work well for you and for the mentees that you're working with.
Excellent, thank you. Samit, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been very valuable. I learned some things from you, so thank you for coming on and talking to us. Sloan, thank you as well for joining. I know it's earlier there in California than it is here. Again, for those of you who are watching, if you have any other questions, do feel free to email us at ignitecs@google.com, and we will get back to you. Our next Hangout on Air is next week, January 5th, is that right?
Yes, at 12:30 Pacific time.
All right, January 5th at 12:30 Pacific time. We will be talking about marketing and recruiting and answering any questions that you have around that topic or any other. So join us. We'll see you then.
Thanks.
Thank you.